Hello, my name is Mac Wilson from The Current, and I am joined in the Current studios by Whitney, Max, and Julien. Good to have you in.
Hello. Thanks for having us.
Yeah.
So the new record, Spark, is on the way this week. It's exciting. It's your first original full length in 3 years. There was that covers album that you snuck in a couple of years back, too. So was that a result of having to record during the pandemic, or was that something that you had planned beforehand? The covers album specifically.
We started recording that before the pandemic hit. It was just kind of a spontaneous thing where we did like 2 covers, just like planning on releasing like a single, like 7-inch or something. And they just like popped out so quickly and sounded so good that it was like, let's just like book another week at the studio and do the whole record.
It was at the end of a tour as well, so the whole live band
were
was
tight.
We were just kind of like, we'd pick a song in the morning, pretty much have the instrumental tracked by like 4 or 5 p.m., and then do vocals and be kind of just listening to it by 7 p.m. done. And did that for 8 days straight.
It was fun.
So it's kind of like, really fast paced.
So as we've been talking to musicians over the last couple of months as we've had them in the studio, a lot of the processes like during the pandemic have been sort of similar. Like, for example, was it one of these instances when you were tracking and writing Spark, was that one of those where you were working on it separately, or did you work, in person, or like how did the process go for it?
Max like landed in Portland where we were living at the time, like 2 days before the world totally shut down. So we were together, and we just did what we always do.
We turned the dining room into a studio, and every place, like every apartment we've had people, when the people come by, they're like, it looks exactly the same as your last one. Meaning like the studio's in the dining room, and then like it's pretty much the main focus of the living space. So we just had everything set up in that space and just kind of started
the songs came together.
Yeah.
Very
piecing the songs together like over that whole year.
Yeah. It was very fun, actually.
So then as you're picking out places to live at each subsequent place, is that the first thing that you look for when you're apartment hunting or something like,
Yeah.
Okay, this has got to be where we set this specific thing up? That is what goes into your head when you're doing that?
Legit. Yeah. It's like, where's the studio going to be? It's always like the center of our house. So
we've had one major misstep where like we lived in an apartment for a year with no natural light.
Yeah.
And it was a tough one. Like we thought that the space was perfect for setting everything up, but then we realized that it was just under like 2 build, like there's a concrete porch above it basically, and it was pitch black every day, all the time.
Which city was that in?
Chicago.
That was in Chicago.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. That was like the beginning of writing for
time.
Forever Turned Around.
We were so burnt out from touring Light Upon the Lake too. It was just like, that was a difficult time for many reasons.
Light Upon the Lake is a really special album to me because every time that you put it on, it's almost something that you can put on anytime, and at the same time, it totally takes you to a separate place. Like, okay, I truly have to devote like half an hour of my life because I'm going to Light Upon the Lake right now. But I can see where when you were first touring behind that one, you're like, okay, this is the only batch of songs that we've got. You can really only play it that you can sequence those songs in only so many ways. So I'm guessing that added up over time.
Oh yeah. We really milked it.
Yeah. And we also that's when we started like adding covers to the set. For a while, I wouldn't say we were desperate on tour or anything, but for a while we were playing like the Golden Girls theme song. We got like really weird with it over
that was good, though.
Yeah, it was so much fun, but I think our heads were so kind of like wrapped in kind of like the constraint of having like only those 10 songs that
It's a short record.
Yeah.
Too.
So as you were putting together Spark, do you think of that as an album that will take people away to a specific place for half an hour of time? Or was there sort of a different headspace that you had for putting this one together?
Totally. I think that's always what we wind up doing when we like remove ourselves, like take a step back from what we've made. And it's like, oh, this is like a place that you can take a proper journey through. And with this record, I think it's like more of like a 3D world than either of our last 2. Not to like diminish them at all, but there was no rules in like the tools that we were using for the record, and I think that you can really travel through this one.
We are here in the Current studio with Whitney. So I have a question about Chicago. You have a Wilco cover in your repertoire, Far, Far Away, that you put out a couple of years back. So one of the big shows that everybody is watching is The Bear, and it's got the soundtrack of lots of bands, including Wilco and other Chicago bands. Have you been approached at any point to contribute any of your songs to the soundtrack of The Bear?
No, but we'd love to.
Yeah.
Honestly, we would write a song for the second season.
It seems very much in your wheelhouse to the point where I had to Google it ahead of time, and I'm like, okay, Whitney, The Bear, let's see if there's any results. And there weren't any soundtrack results. There were some cute toys, though, called,
Yeah, I know. I bet that, I was going to say, I bet those search results could be varying with that one.
So we are glad to have you in today. You're playing at the Electric Fetus, and is that high on your list of favorite record stores around, or have you been to the Fetus before?
Yeah, actually, an interesting story there. Going back to our first, one of our first shows in Minneapolis, we played the Triple Rock, and it was when Light Upon the Lake was coming out, and we hadn't held Light Upon the Lake in its vinyl form yet, and we actually had the records shipped to Electric Fetus and drove there and picked them up in our van, and that was the first time that we ever had the physical copies of that record.
Any record
that we made
together
was here, and we picked it up from that store.
I've talked with bands before about the experience of hearing your music on the radio for the first time, but you only get so many stories about bands picking up their physical media for the first time. Mm-hmm. So that's cool to hear you tell that.
And it was kind of funny too, because we were in this old church van that we bought to tour that was kind of a bizarre vehicle. And we got the cassettes as well, and we put the cassette in, and the van played it back at the wrong speed. It was a little too fast, and we were all just what's going on? We were listening to our music just a little, it's a little higher pitched and sounded very bizarre, but it was pretty fun.
Well, that's how Billy Joel started out, right? His first record was pressed at the wrong speed, so his voice was speeded up just that little bit. And, back then they're well, this is how it is, deal with it. So, but it was was it a playback error, or was it actually mastered wrong?
No, it was just the van.
It was the van was crappy.
Yeah.
We're here with Max and Julien of Whitney, and your previous band popped into my head a couple of months ago. I'm sure you've told plenty of stories about Smith Westerns over time, but we did a promo for the weekend programs that we have here on the Current, and we used Weekend by Smith Westerns. And I'm like, that was a nice band. I'm glad that they are able to live on in certain ways. Does that band still live on in your head in ways, or do you firmly try to put it in the rearview mirror?
I don't really make any rules about it, but it is funny. I feel one of the last sessions we did was here at the Current, Smith Westerns, on that. I think it was 2013. It must have been. We did a session here, and we were kind of on the end of the Soft Will tour, I think, and that was kind of near the end of all of us were feeling. We'd been in the band since we were 18. All of us were feeling a little emotionally tired, and we're maybe thinking about the project, moving on from the project, but. Yeah, I remember that session very well at that time at the Current, which is kind of funny that you brought it up because it was a specific memory here.
We look like total babies.
Yeah, there's a photo
I've seen,
of us.
The photo of me. I think I was in a drum room.
Oh yeah, actually back in the corner,
looking like a child.
Well, we are here with Whitney. I have friends. We have a group chat where we talk about music all the time, and whenever Whitney comes up, we say, "Oh, they're the best boys. They're just awesome guys." One friend of mine traveled across the country. You were in Wyoming or Idaho or something, and I'm
Boise?
I think it may have been
it probably
Boise.
Would be Boise. Yeah.
I'm like, that just looks like a great day. You were outside, and I'm like, that seems like a great day to spend in the sun with Whitney. So we have really fond memories of you here as well.
Great,
thank you.
Yeah.
We love being here.
Looking to make more, We got a whole new run coming up, so we'll be back.
There you go. Whitney, the new record is Spark, and they are in the Current studio.